Hey everyone, and welcome back to Comics and Chill, where we are continuing the Millarworld Retrospective. And today we will be looking at The Magic Order Volume 2, King of Spies, Prodigy, The Icarus Society, The Magic Order Volume 3, American Jesus Revelation, Nightclub, and The Magic Order Volume 4. So that's quite a lot, and what I've just listed there is actually the release order of these series, but I will be switching things up a little bit. Nemesis Reloaded was actually released between Nightclub and The Magic Order Volume 4, but I will be booting that over to the next video along with The Ambassadors, as I feel those two series serve as an immediate lead-in to Big Game. I will also be clustering all of the remaining volumes of The Magic Order into one section at the end of this video just to keep things a little simpler. Okay, so let's dive in, and first of all we'll be looking at the King of Spies, which sees Millar once again collaborating with Matteo Scalera. They work together on Space Bandits, but here they're teaming up to work on a spy story. Roland King is one of the greatest secret agents to ever do it, but now he's old and doesn't like the state of the world around him, a state that he actually had a hand in creating. Add to that being a bad father, a worse husband, and a brain tumor that has given him just 6 months to live, and he really has nothing to lose. So he decides he'll go out with a bang, taking out all the scum he served and protected, trying to right as many wrongs as he can, guns a-blazing, before his time runs out. And Millar said in interviews about this story, "The spy world was very good to us with the Kingsman, and a return to the genre had to be something special. This is that project. I love stories about an old gunfighter back for one last job, and this is the granddaddy of them all. I often feel funny watching blockbuster movies. On the one hand, in 2008, I was rooting for Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne to win. But on the other, the financial crash was going on that year, and these are the guys who would fire 30% of their workforce to balance the books. It's the same with British secret agent movies. On the one hand, I love seeing the bad guy blown away and a Union Jack rolling down the screen. On the other, I'm aware that the country is a mess. There's division like we've never seen. All these kids are living in poverty, and these super spies are defending kings and queens in their palaces. I like the idea of someone like that, who had every advantage in life, looking out the back of a taxi at London boarded up and homeless people in shop doorways. Is this what he risked his life for? A corrupt status quo? That was an interesting starting point for me. And I agree, the concept sounds excellent. We've seen Millar do this kind of lost gunslinger story before with Old Man Logan, and he did it well. I enjoyed that series. So taking that concept and applying it to a James Bond type character, specifically one that looks kind of like an older Pierce Brosnan, I was quite excited for this series. And I'm sure this has been said elsewhere, but surely this has to be a pitch by Millar and Netflix to get Pierce Brosnan on board to rectify the travesty that was his final James Bond film. And if you've seen that movie, the opening is pretty solid, so long as you exclude the surfing, and clearly points to a better movie of Bond going rogue after being hung out to dry by M. So whilst I like the premise that's been set up here, I do feel it underdelivers just a little. At only 4 issues long, it's a very, very brief read. My favourite parts of it are the inner monologue of Roland King, learning about his history and his emotions in the state that he's in right now, dying from cancer after giving his entire life to serve what he is now realising is corruption. There's some of that inner monologue that reminds me a little bit of Dark Knight Returns, that kind of stuff. It's done quite well, but you are mainly getting that in the first issue and the last issue, with issues 2 and 4 kind of feeling a little just by the numbers. The series definitely not short on action, but not much of the action is super memorable. I think with him being a spy, I would have liked to have seen him go on his revenge mission in a lot more intricate detail. Maybe actually seeing him struggle to take out some of the targets he's going after. He does breeze through quite a lot of it, and whilst I did enjoy the comic, it's not bad. It's just I wanted a bit more. It still feels like it's in the sort of pitch stage. The other thing I noticed is there's not a lot of characters that you can really get behind in this. Everyone's kind of a crappy person. One of the reasons Roland King is doing this is he is not happy with his relationship with his son. He wasn't quite there for him, or really at all, and his son has grown up to be a spy too and becomes involved in the hunt for his father, and Roland doesn't really want to see his son go down the same path that he went down and waste his life serving the kinds of people that he has served. However, they do show his kid doing some really, really heinous stuff, and I have to be honest with you, I didn't really want to see him get saved. I didn't think he deserved redeeming either. With that being said, the whole book looks incredible. Matteo Scalera, he can do no wrong. I think maybe his style may have been miscast for this story. Sometimes the characters look a bit too bouncy or cartoony for such a grim and gritty story. I think Goran Parlov might have been a better fit for this series, especially when you consider his work on things like Fury Max and Punisher. But that's about all I got on this one. Okay, so next up we've got Prodigy, the Icarus Society, and we return to our super genius, Edison Crane, who once again is feeling in need of a challenge for his intellect, and he falls into a world he had no idea existed, a secret society of super geniuses who have outfoxed him, blackmailing him into retrieving an artifact for them. The only problem is, it's practically a suicide mission. Now, I didn't much care for the first volume of this series. You can check the previous video for that. And this book is better than the first one, but only slightly, which doesn't make it great. Again, it involves a fair bit of globe-trotting, but the locations in this are way more interesting and of a more sort of mythical and sci-fi setting. Edison isn't quite as smug in this one, and you actually get to see him on the back foot for a change as he goes up against several characters as smart as he is. But with all that being said, I just read this book last week and it's not hung about in my head too much. I think Matteo Buffagni's art is a better fit for the series, more than Raphael Albuquerque. And that's pretty much all I've got to say about this. I really don't have that much interest in this series. There are other Millarworld books I definitely prefer. It's better than the first volume of Prodigy, but it's still not great. Okay, next up, this is it. The knockdown, drag-out brawl between Christ and the Antichrist that we've been waiting 19 years for. And does Millar deliver? In my opinion, yes he does, but probably not in the way that you're expecting. So the story in the third volume bounces back over to Jody Christensen, who we last saw in volume 1, believing himself to be the second coming of Christ, but actually being the new Antichrist, ushered off to be raised by a satanic cult that is close to completing its goal of global domination. We get to see what Jody's life is like as the current president of the United States, and there are a few flashbacks that fill in the gaps of his path to the White House, and of course it leads to Jody and Catalina finally meeting. I really enjoyed this series, and I won't give away any more here. You should definitely check this one out for yourself. I was very surprised by the ending, and I think it is some of Millar's best writing, and I was relieved that this series had been tied up so well after all these years. And inside of just 9 issues, it's a really neat story. Peter Gross's artwork seems to look a lot closer to the original series in line quality, whether this is from finding more natural brush settings in Clip Studio Pro, or if he is actually able to draw on paper again, I don't know, but I'm very happy that he is able to continue making books in spite of any setbacks by his hand tremors. There are a few pages illustrated by Tom Coker. He worked with Jonathan Hickman on the Black Monday murders. Tom Coker draws a few pages, but not to fill in for Peter Gross. Coker's style is used in scenes that needed to be set apart visually from the rest of the story, and I feel it works very well here. To explain these scenes would be perhaps too spoilerific, so I will leave it there. But very happy with how this turned out, and buy this series. Okay, next up we have Nightclub. Now, when Danny Garcia and his slacker friends, Amy and Sam, attempt to hit the big time by performing stunts on YouTube, things quickly go south when Danny breaks his neck in 3 places. However, when a vampire by the name of Detective Nick Lascaraz visits Danny in hospital and bites him in order to save his life in exchange for being recruited into his vampire army, Danny's life is obviously flipped on its head. He's told to wait to be summoned for the big vampire war, I guess, that's coming up, but instead bites his 2 pals, who then decide to use their vampire powers to become a trio of luchador-themed superheroes, who then go on to stream their escapades on YouTube. That's a bit of a mouthful for the setup, but it's quite a lot of fun in the moment. It reminded me a lot of when I used to read Ultimate Spider-Man as a kid, but with vampires stirred into the mix. I can't say that it's left a massive impression on me, as I've read similar stories, probably told a little better elsewhere, but I also don't think that I'm the demographic for this book either. It's definitely aimed at younger readers. Had I read this when I was 12, I probably wouldn't be able to shut up about it. And with it being priced as low as it is, just $1.99 per issue, I'm sure that getting this book into a younger audience's hands was part of Millar's decision to price the book that low. Now, I'm not certain if 12-year-olds frequent comic shops in this day and age, but if they do, giving them a #1 issue that they can pick up so cheap, as opposed to some of the recent high-priced books that Marvel's been putting out, like Ultimate Invasion and Gods, where it's, I think, like $7.99 and $9.99 for issue 1 of those series. I mean, this is a great idea, and Millar is in a position where I think he can afford to take the hit financially if this gamble doesn't pay off. And I was reading this as it was coming out. When I read the first issue earlier this year, combined with the cover price, art style and storytelling pace, my first thought was, this is Millar doing a shonen manga. And whilst in interviews he has said that he is competing for readers against manga with this new low price point, I haven't seen much mention of him deliberately trying to match manga stylistically. And whether it's conscious or not, a lot about this book reminds me of shonen manga. The setup of high school kids become vampires and choose to be superheroes is a pretty simple one, but I feel that you get tons and tons of story opportunities out of this setup, and it also has a ton of wish fulfillment fantasy for kids of that age, as we see these characters use their new abilities to help them with bullies at school and other troubles that teenagers are having. The big open page layouts and how quickly each page reads, the simplistic and very clear approach to the art. I feel that this artwork would work just fine in black and white, or if they really wanted to go the extra mile, have someone go through and add zipper tone to it, which can be done quite easily these days with digital tools. I think it would work a lot better as a consistent ongoing series, and I know that Millar shies away from ongoing series these days, but even if he was helping break the story down and then had someone else on scripts, I feel that there's a lot of potential here. I think they should keep publishing as an ongoing in the direct market and put out full color trades, but also create a black and white tankobon edition and get that into circulation in bookstores and other markets. With Millar having the Netflix hookup and this IP being created for Netflix as a show first, I could see this being an anime, and alongside that having the tankobon editions of Nightclub translated and released in a Japanese manga market too. I know I'm not really talking about the book so much here, but with the state that Western comics seem to be in at the moment, and the more I think about marketing and distributing my own comics, it is fun to think of Western properties breaking into the manga market and bookstore market, and it's also frustrating to see a few publishers and creators trying to make moves in this direction. Someone on Millar's level taking a stab at this could be a step in that direction, and if it doesn't work out for him, again, I don't think he'd be sweating it too much financially. But back to the book, it was a lot of fun in the moment when I was reading it. It hasn't really stuck around with me too much, since I definitely feel that a younger audience, or myself if I were younger, would really enjoy this. I personally hadn't heard of the artist Juan Ramirez, but I think he does a great job on this book. The first issue or two, the art is looking kind of light in its line work. There's not a ton of line weight stuff going on. It looked perhaps a little too digital, but the art actually really improves as the series goes on. The story wraps up pretty quick, and I would have preferred to either see it just be a longer series where we could get to know these characters a little better and see them with these unique powers in a lot of different situations, or just have it be an ongoing. Okay, and last up we have the Magic Order Volumes 2, 3 and 4. Now with Volume 2, things shift over to the UK in this volume, where the London chapter of the Magic Order is having a spot of bother with their turf being threatened by yet another band of evil wizards. However, without giving too much away, the beef between them and the Order goes back a long time. And it's pretty good, and with Stuart Immonen reteaming with Millar after working with him on Empress, visually it is brilliant. In terms of story, it kind of feels like a typical but bigger sequel with more explosions, etc. There are some new characters introduced from the UK side of the Order, but I was kind of hoping to see a bit more development of Cordelia, considering how low down she was starting in the first volume. She seems to have taken to a leadership role very quickly, and I would have liked to have seen her have a bit more of a struggle in that regard. As a Welshman, however, I was pleasantly surprised to see the town of Aberystwyth featured in this. That's a town in the west coast of Wales. You don't see Wales pop up in a lot of comics, so I'll take whatever I can get. Now on to Volume 3. I absolutely loved this one. This volume shows us a bit of the Asian chapters of the Magic Order and some abuse of power that may or may not be taking place there. We learn more about Leonard Moonstone's wife, where she's been all this time, and a terrible secret that the couple share. We get to see the training of one of the Order's youngest prospects and a darkness that she may hold, and tons more. And I'm being as vague as I can to avoid spoiling too much of this for you, but this third volume has so much crammed into it that it actually feels like 2 volumes. Somehow, the pacing is managed in a way where it does not feel overstuffed, and these multiple plot lines blend together with an excellent rhythm. It was during this volume that I felt like the Magic Order is basically an ongoing series, and I would be very excited to buy this month in, month out. And all of this is beautifully illustrated by an artist who I was unfamiliar with, Gigi Cavanago, and it has incredible colour work by Valentina Napolitano. Apparently this is Cavanago's first work in US comics, debuting after working in the Italian comic market for over 15 years, and I'm very keen to dig up whatever work of his I can find. He has an excellent command of page layout, panel composition, shape and perspective, and knows when to crank up the level of detail and when to pull it back, all with an incredibly elegant line, not unlike the work of Goran Parlov. I was very inspired and excited by the art in this book, and this volume has ensured that I'll be picking up all all Magic Order books from here on out. So now on to Volume 4, and after a massive fallout within the Order in the last volume, several members are becoming disillusioned with the strict rules that they've had to follow for so long. As cracks begin to form in the foundations of the Order, that is when, yet again, the evil wizards strike. And I enjoyed this volume just as much as the previous one. Again, I'm reluctant to give spoilers, but this volume does dive a bit deeper into the lore of the Order, and one of my favourite parts of this story is set in a fantasy realm that a few of the characters get stranded in. And the whole concept of this realm, what is found there and why it exists at all, I felt was quite clever and a great twist that had been slowly built to throughout these volumes. There's another artist I was unfamiliar with on this series, and I hope I get this name right, Daik Ruan, a Chinese-born artist currently living in Italy and with a background in architecture. And like Koipel and Cavernago before him, he's bringing a lot of soft, elegant line work to the table, as well as employing a lot of grey washes for his backgrounds and lighting. And that's about all I've got to say on these series. After my initial lack of interest in the Magic Order at all, I'm now a complete convert. As you can tell, I'm quite excited about it. And like I said with Jupiter's Legacy, I think if you pick up all volumes of this and just read through them all in one go, you're going to have a great time. So, which of these titles do I recommend? You can probably guess already, but King of Spies, I'm kind of on the fence about. It looks excellent, the concept is fun, it's just a little undercooked. Prodigy, the Icarus Society, I would save you cash. American Jesus Revelation, or the whole American Jesus trilogy, definitely a recommend from me. Nightclub, it's definitely fun if you've got some kids or nieces or nephews who are in their teens, maybe pick it up for them. And Magic Order, yes, absolutely yes, pick it up. And I'm sure when it gets turned into a show, everyone's gonna love it, but why wait for the show? This comic is brilliant, and the caliber of artists that's being used on it, I hope it just continues to trend in the direction it's been going, because I've really, really enjoyed it. But that's it for me this video. If you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, signing up to my newsletter, the link's in the description, and I'll be back real soon with another video in the Millarworld retrospective. We're nearly there, guys. Have a great day.